Episode 100 of the podcast. I can't believe it's 100 episodes already. In the first part, we're going to talk about the podcast in the 100th episode. And in the second part, we're going to talk about some tips for newbie groomers, for those beginner groomers. But I think some really good review for all of us who've been doing it for a while now, too. You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Newmeyer-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, a certified behavior consultant for canines, a certified professional dog trainer, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the podcast where grooming and training meet. Episode 100 of the podcast. Holy moly, episode 100. So some of you might be wondering if that's a big deal. All right, it is for me. I mean, certainly it means that I have created 100 episodes, which if you're listening, you might just think, oh, yeah, but how hard could that be? But I put my heart and soul into these for you guys. I have given myself 100 different projects, right? Like 100 self-imposed assignments to bring to an audience and 100 performances. Right? And those are no Tixies Backsies. They're out there forever. I suppose I could go through and erase if I really wanted to, but they're out there forever. Right? So what kind of things have I learned? Because it's been nearly 2 years. Actually, I will say it's been a little bit more than 2 years because I put out the first episodes in October of 2018, but I actually signed up for the account and was playing with it back in August of 2019, like playing with it and trying to figure out how it all works. And so it's been about 2 years because right now we're in September of 2020. I have learned so much. And 2 years ago, I wasn't sure if anyone would be interested in this podcast, if this was too specific, right? I mean, they say find your niche, but this is like the nichiest niche podcast in podcast land. When other podcasters say, I think I have a really tiny niche, I'm like, nope. And often they'll ask me, they're like, wait, there are podcasts about dogs? Yep. There are podcasts about dog grooming? Yep. There's a podcast about teaching dogs to be good for grooming? I'm like, there's at least one. I mean, maybe there are more. I don't know. But we really have this tiny, tiny topic. And I was a little bit worried that no one would be interested. Now, the other problem I had is there's this constant struggle with imposter syndrome, okay? And thinking, who am I to do this show? And also thinking, what if people hate it? So I gotta say, I know how people can be really, really mean, and I haven't found that at all. People have been really nice. People have said that they've really enjoyed it. And apparently the people who didn't like it just haven't said anything. Because I'm sure there's someone out there, but there's been no downside. Now, to get over the imposter syndrome, should I try it? Like, who am I to do this, right? I talk to other groomers and trainers who do podcasts, who do lectures, who speak at conferences. And what they all told me was that, get out there and try it. Share what you know and see what happens. And I gotta say, that's kind of what I live by. Like, I'm just gonna share what I know or share what I'm going through or share what I'm trying to learn about. Because some of it's stuff that you know and some of it is stuff that you're learning, right? But I'm gonna share because I want all of us to have a better experience grooming our dogs. I want all the dogs to have a better experience, right? I want our owners to have a better experience. The vets and the vet techs to have a better experience, right? So I'm just going to share. And it's made me pretty happy. It's been pretty successful. It's a tiny, tiny little niche podcast that it is. So I got to say, I've really enjoyed doing it, and I've met some really awesome people. I've met some really good friends through this, and some people that I don't know if I would have met otherwise. It's been a lot of fun. But I'm here for you guys, and I love meeting listeners, and I love talking to listeners. And sometimes I'm kind of surprised when somebody recognizes me, which is kind of neat, but I have that giggle. And if you listen to my podcasts, you can tell the laugh. So why a podcast? This is a question I get asked an awful lot, and I'm just kind of reflecting because we're on episode 100. You may not know this, but this podcast started out because I was trying to write a book on this topic. I was trying to write a book. For years, I was trying to write a book. And I'd chip away at it and write some more. And then I'd go back and reread what I wrote months before. And dang it to heck, I don't do things that way anymore. Right? It was constantly rewriting this ever-changing document. And then I found podcasts. Now, the advantage with a podcast is that it's a really good way to present something current, and it's really obvious that older episodes are older, right? It's almost like, for instance, when I'm watching Hulu to watch my local news, I know if I go back episodes, right? Like news from 5 nights ago is different than tonight's news or yesterday's news, right? Like it's far more obvious. And I find that podcasting makes it a little bit easier for people to really visualize, oh, that's information from a year ago. That's information from 2 years ago. You know, that's not the same current stuff. And because it's ever changing, I keep learning, and I want us all to be in that mindset of I'm willing to change with new information. Of course I am, right? We should be continuing to change and grow and learn more. And I've definitely changed. And I will tell you, I argue with Chrissy from the past on some of the earlier episodes. There are a couple of times where I'm like, oh, dang it, Chrissy, you were so close, but we weren't there yet. And this is just going to continue. I don't train or groom the same way I did 5 years ago. In 5 years from now, I will be doing it differently too. And that's just kind of the way that life works. And I want us all to kind of be thinking like, yeah, I can change. If someone convinces me that there's a better way to do something, you know, like, okay, let me run it through my filter and decide if that's something I think would work for me, if I see a benefit to it, you know, and can I learn something new? Because, so I've been grooming for a long time, but I plan on grooming for another 20 years. So if I look at it that way, like, why wouldn't I learn something that makes my life easier for my future 20 years of grooming? And I was talking to someone today realizing that 20 years from now, I'll be 69. Oh my God, maybe I don't want to groom that long. I don't know. Barbara Bird's still out there grooming, so I will continue. Thank you, Barbara. But I want you to think about the new information, and that there's always new information. And that's why I really chose the podcast. And sometimes people ask me, like, why not videos? And I know that many of us learn by watching. So I will add videos from time to time. I've been working on some videos, but as a house caller, coming up with a good video can be really tricky because I'm in somebody's home. Sound quality can be crazy, camera angles, interruptions. And not only that, but even my customers who are like, oh no, you can go ahead and videotape in my house. Like there's some privacy stuff there too. Like, okay, where can I set this up where your refrigerator with your son's information for daycare isn't in this frame? You know, like think about just the intricacies of trying to work on video can be really tricky. And I'm not, the podcast once a week is a lot of work. Trying to do video once a week would be way too much. So I'm not talking about adding video every week, but I will be trying to add some video. I understand that many of us learn that way. But in the meantime, I'm a really happy podcaster, and I like researching topics, and I like bringing it to life with my quirky little stories and silliness and trying to give enough examples and kind of, you know, let's talk about this example so that it brings it to life for you in a way that just watching might not. So anyway, 100 episodes of the podcast, and this podcast is going to stick around for a long time. I really enjoy doing it. And I have grown so much because I'm doing these little research projects for you every week. Even if it's something I already know, I still go through, I read stuff and I'm like, am I presenting the most current version? Am I presenting the best? Am I bringing my best game to you? And I want to bring my best game to you. If you're enjoying this podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes and tell all of your friends. I asked on Facebook what you guys would like for episode 100. And one answer was to give some top tips for newbie groomers. Thank you, Lisa Wilcox. That's a great topic. Now, when you're brand new to grooming, nothing is on autopilot yet. You're still learning about everything. You know, it's pretty common to be thinking about, excuse me, it's pretty common to think about the way you're holding your clippers or that piece of hair that you're going to trim off, or, you know, you might miss something. You might not notice things because everything is happening all at once. And I want you to think about, for those of us who drive, there might be somebody out there who doesn't, but most of us who drive, there was a point when you really had to think about everything. You had to think about where the gas pedal is and how much to press. You know, you had to think about where the blinker is and when to turn it on. And then you're thinking about, like, if you drove a standard, you know, like putting in the clutch and shifting gears, you know, and eventually all of those things go on autopilot. And then you're just thinking about the road. So when you're new to grooming, there's an awful lot of time that you spend learning about all of it. And none of it's on autopilot yet. And here are some things that I was thinking about for you guys. And this is part of comfort, which is part of the 3 C's: calm, comfortable, and cooperative. Now, the first one I'm going to mention, if you're really fixated on your tools and where that hair is and what the trim is going to look like, I want you to think about the dog's range of motion. Range of motion is really important, and keeping a dog comfortable is part of preventing behavior problems. And I know that seems like, well, yeah, okay, I guess behavior problems might happen, but wouldn't a good dog just not give you a problem even though they're uncomfortable? You know what? I want you to be thinking about, it's our job to try to help them be comfortable with it. So range of motion, here's one. To extend a front leg, a dog needs to bend at the elbow. And I've seen a lot of beginner groomers do that, where they're trying to like pull the leg forward without letting the elbow bend. And simply knowing that they have to bend their elbow to extend that leg forward, like give them a chance to get their balance, lift that foot up, bend their elbow, and then guide the foot where you want it to be. And guide it, not pull it or yank it, because some dogs don't have much range of motion. So things to be thinking about. Okay, but I've seen beginner groomers, like suddenly their dog is being fined for them because they're letting them bend at the elbow and letting them readjust and get their balance. Another one for range of motion. So dog shoulders are designed to rock forward and backward. There isn't a whole lot of motion there. They rock forward and backward. They were not designed to move out to the side. And so even though you might be thinking, well, I have to get inside this armpit, I want you to be thinking about the range of motion there and how much the dog can move. Because sometimes the dog is like, we're trying to lift a leg, and especially a dog who is uncomfortable, maybe due to injury or age or just not being built well. It's going to become a behavior problem. They're like, oh, heck no. Oh, heck no. And we kind of need to sit back and recognize, am I asking too much of this dog? So lifting up in such a way that the shoulder's being pulled out also means that they have to move the rest of their body to counteract that. And sometimes we as groomers are so fixated on having them standing and standing straight that we kind of forget about this range of motion stuff. So as a newbie, I want newbies to really be thinking about, like, okay, how is this dog designed to move? Now, one of the ways you can do that is to watch video of grooming. If you watch grooming shows where the grooming competitions, like, those are people who are so awesome with these dogs, and these dogs are so good, and it's a great way to just watch. First of all, you can watch lots of things like scissoring, you can watch clippers, you can watch like what the trims look like, But you can also get a feel for how are they moving these dogs to get those angles that they need. And that's part of range of motion. Now, here is another one that I see newbies doing, and that is lifting legs up high, because that can be really uncomfortable. If you're lifting a leg up high, whether it's a front leg or a back leg, and sometimes it's a dog who's kicking out at you, right? There are times where a dog lifts their leg up high, and you're like, I am just going to take advantage of the situation we have, and I'm going to go ahead and trim that foot, even though it's up here in the sky, and someone's going to come along and say, Chrissy, I thought we don't put the legs up high, But we want to be thinking about that their legs really, they usually aren't lifting them up that high. The dogs who do lift their legs up that high probably also lift their legs to pee, right? They've worked that muscle. You might find that they can only do it on one side. And I will say, it's not just male dogs that will lift a leg. My female used to, with my last girl, she'd lift her leg and pee on things. She was very, very good at it. So it's not just male dogs, but I want you to be thinking about lifting a leg up high can be really uncomfortable. Twisting feet and toes to trim the nails. That's another one. That can really hurt, right? I want you to think about, kind of keep that foot in line with the bottom part of their leg when you're picking it up, and move yourself around, or move the table up, or lower the table, whatever it is you need to do to have a better view of that foot without necessarily trying to crank toes. Toes shouldn't be moving around an awful lot. And even if you're doing a poodle foot, you're kind of separating toes, but you shouldn't be putting one toe up and three toes down, right? They are not as flexible as some groomers seem to think they should be. So I want you to be thinking about those feet, right? So as new groomers, and even those of us who've been grooming for a while, to kind of think about hey, yeah, this dog is acting up, and am I doing something that's uncomfortable? I will also add here, I videotape myself. And I know in the last segment I just said, yeah, I don't really do video. I don't necessarily do video that I can show everybody because I'm in people's houses. But I videotape myself. And yeah, I will definitely take a look at things that I'm doing and go, ooh, yeah, if I were a fly on the wall, I would have said, Chrissy, stop that. Or, hey, Chrissy, this dog is reacting to that thing that you're doing. It's a little bit more obvious when you watch video of yourself. So go ahead and take video of yourself. Now, here is another one. Just thinking about the dog's body, helping a dog be comfortable. Putting dryers next to ears can hurt. I mean, it's more than just the sound is obnoxious, but if you're trying to dry an ear and that dog is wiggling around an awful lot and they get that high velocity air down their ear canal, that can cause damage. And I don't mean to scare newbie groomers. I know that they're... So, as with all things, there are all types of people, but some groomers are, really bold, I'm just going to go with it. And others are really, really nervous when they first start out. And I'm not trying to scare anybody off, but I want you to be thinking yeah, we need to be careful when we have things like the dryer, blowing air, if it's near an ear, if it's near their eye, if it's near their nose. We want to be careful in those areas because that can hurt. Now, here's another one. Tails can be really sensitive, right? Don't just go pulling on it. And if you're holding a tail up and they sit down, you know what? You might be saying, well, you're pulling on you. I'm not pulling on you. But we should be trying to help guide them back up to standing up or adjust ourselves. If we're trying to hold that dog's weight up by their tail while they're trying to sit down, we're going to hurt them. Plain and simple. That's a way for a dog to get hurt. And we need to be aware of that, especially those little tiny docked tails. Now, think about it for a little Yorkie as an example, because I had one customer who was having so much trouble with her Yorkie and trying to clean his bum. And what she was doing was trying to force that tail up. And so every time he's trying to pin his tail down, she's forcing it up. But those little tendons and ligaments, those don't get used an awful lot, right? Those aren't worked very often. So she was stuck in this cycle of him getting hurt by fighting her. Whereas when I would go over, and actually I didn't realize she was having a problem with it at first, because she was like, why is he so good for you? And I didn't know he wasn't good for her. And I'd go underneath and I'd massage that little bit of his tail. Just massage it a little bit before I go lifting it up. And then I was placing a finger underneath his tail and letting him press against a finger, but not actually like pulling on his tail. So I want you to be thinking like those little tails, yeah, those can be really painful, and be thinking about that, because sometimes the behavior problems that we see are based on a dog who is having trouble with what we're doing physically. Not necessarily even our equipment, but just the way we're moving them. Here is another one. Many, many dogs out there have bad teeth. And I want you to think about if you have a sore tooth or your gums are sore and someone was holding your face or combing or brushing or otherwise kind of like moving your lips around and your gums around, or maybe they're holding that fur that's making your gums move around, because you don't just move one part of their face when you're holding like the fur on one side of their mouth, right? Like it's kind of rubbing up against all of their gums. And dogs that have bad teeth can be really fussy about their face for those reasons, right? The combs, the brushing, the touching, and the vibration of the clippers. Some of those dogs are better with like a comb and some shears instead of clippers, just because their gums are sore. And actually there are times, thinking about all of these different things, but if there's a dog that I'm working with who has some known issues, who, has some soreness that we know about, especially like some of these older dogs who are on medication for pain, I will ask the owners like, hey, can we talk to the vet and ask him or her, if it would be okay for your dog to get their pain medication in time for it to have its best effect during grooming. And most of the time the vets are like, oh, I never would have thought of that. Yeah, before grooming, And they're like, sure, that seems okay. But it's a good conversation to have. Like, does he happen to be on pain meds? And how can we best use the timing of what he normally gets? One of my dogs like is on twice a day for something after a surgery, and he's getting it twice a day. And I'm like, then we should make sure that we're doing our grooming somewhere close to when he is most comfortable, when his medication helps him be the most comfortable. So we can talk about that with like their teeth and stuff. Many of these older dogs, these owners love them, but they're wrestling with the risk of anesthesia with a dog who is older. And does that risk weigh out and balance out for them? So sometimes you have dogs with terrible, terrible teeth with owners who are truly awesome. So we try not to blame owners on that. Try not. And here's another part about blaming owners. Sometimes bad teeth, it's really easy to say like, oh, well, they should have been taking care of that all along. Okay, we all brush our teeth. I brush my teeth every day, right? I've still had dental problems, right? Even if they're brushing their dog's teeth every day, it doesn't mean that their dog isn't going to have some dental problems. So we need to kind of be a little bit more aware that some of these dogs have some bad teeth, and that can make it really uncomfortable, and there might be a reason why they haven't done anything about it yet. Okay. Another one. Here's another one when we're talking about comfort, helping these dogs be comfortable, things that you might not be thinking about while you're maneuvering your clippers as a newbie groomer, or you're learning how to hold shears, or you're trying to figure out where, how to blend an area. Another one that's kind of tricky is that skin conditions can be really itchy or sore. So sometimes a dog is like, if she brushes that area one more time, I'm going to scream. And I know I'm being really anthropomorphic, but I think we have seen dogs have a response to like, okay, all right, this whole brushing thing is really getting to me, right? And sometimes it's because they have a skin condition. It's itchy, or it's sore, or there's something going on in that area. Some of these older dogs that have moles and warts and things like that, like just something to be aware of. As you're learning, you're going to kind of be focused in on one or two things tops. But if we're thinking about this, so if a dog starts having a hard time, and I want to remind everybody, dogs are having a hard time. They aren't giving us a hard time. Those things are different, right? It's not like the dog decided, next time I'm at the grooming shop, I am totally going off on that woman, right? Like, no, that's not usually what's going on. They're having a hard time. So these are some of the ways that we can help them be comfortable. But if you notice a dog is having a hard time, as a newbie groomer especially, but for all of us, I think it's a good reminder, kind of say, am I looking at range of motion? Is there a skin problem? Is there a joint problem? Is this dog sore? Is this dog super overweight and having trouble standing up? Is this dog super thin and maybe exhausted by what we're doing? Like, what kind of things can we look at, and how can we adjust to make it more comfortable and not necessarily just think that this dog is fighting us? And that's the big part for newbies especially, but some of the more seasoned groomers too, like, oh, this dog is fighting me for this. But let's take a step back, right? Like, where is it coming from? And is it something that's going to be something that we can manage better? And it's true. A dog who is well trained will not fight you even if it hurts, right? But that's not a good message, and that doesn't mean we should just power through it. Right? We still want to be aware, like, okay, how can I make this really comfortable? That's just good animal handling. So that's my bit for newbie groomers, right? I want you to be thinking about what the dog is going through and how to make it more comfortable, and kind of reassess if you are forgetting about the dog underneath your tools. Sometimes we just are fixated on the haircut, right? Be thinking about the dog underneath there. There's a little character there with a whole personality and a set of wants and needs, and we should be aware of that and be thinking about that while we groom. And by the way, congratulations to all the newbie groomers out there, because it's a great field to be in. So have fun with it. Don't get scared just because I mentioned a whole bunch of things. Have fun. If you'd like more information, you can find me at chrissy@happycritters.net, happycrittersdogtraining.com, or you can join the Facebook group, Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast, or the Facebook page, Creating Great Grooming Dogs. I really look forward to hearing from you.